Hello, my name is Malcolm Childress. I'm Executive Director of Global Land Alliance and Co-Director of Prindex. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be a part of this panel and to have this opportunity, although virtually, to participate with the IEA Congress. Thank you. I'd like to talk about the Prindex initiative a little bit from an overview level today. And let me just start off by saying, as in my former incarnation as a World Bank official working in over 40 countries with land reforms and land administration systems, one of the biggest problems in discussing or moving policy dialogues and discussions forward was always the issue of how do we know the size and the scope of the problem? How do we see, how do we monitor progress? How do we know where things are changing? We've had this problem of data, this problem of understanding in the land sector for a long time. And Prindex is an attempt to address that problem. It's, I think, a part of the solution, and it's based on the idea of measuring perceptions. Let me just give some overview about Prindex as a new initiative to create a global indicator. And I want to mention that this is an initiative that's been supported since its inception by the OMIDIAR network, by the government of the United Kingdom, and implemented by Global Land Alliance and ODI. The assessment has now been carried out in 140 countries using national samples, and really with this objective of developing nationally representative, globally comparative data set that's publicly available with an approach and a methodology that can be adapted to different contexts and countries and groups. And we hope we'll be able to follow this issue through time and give us this a way into understanding the problem of property rights insecurity. We hope that this use of this data set can influence change in the design of national policies and programs related to land and property, that it can help to monitor the impact of policies and programs using perceptions of tenure security as an intermediary measure of success, and contribute to tracking key development indicators at a global level. The real headline from the global round of surveys so far is that on average, nearly 1 in 5 adults feel insecure about their land or property rights. And you can see on this map that there's some variation regionally about the intensity of that perception. Of course, this translates or projects out to something like a billion, almost a billion people worldwide expressing some kind of perception of insecurity. We learn a lot from just doing this about what the types of tenure are at a global level: ownership, family, access to land through family ties, renting, staying with permission. And we see that the perception of insecurity is really different across these groups. I think this is not surprising, but a strong empirical confirmation. Renters in the orange circles here across these different subregions, tending to express quite a bit higher levels of insecurity than owners in the black circles, and family owned or family members in the white circles. Let me just say that we're using a standard question about how likely it is that you, the respondent, would lose the land or other property, home or other property, against your will within the next 5 years as the core question. It's also one of the SDG land questions, specifically using face-to-face interviews in most cases, some telephone surveys in particularly in North America and Northern Europe. And this has covered about 168,000 people during 2018 and 2019, mostly in collaboration with the Gallup World Poll. So we used a module on the Gallup World Poll for most of the countries. We have a couple of reports available on the website, prindex.net, and I would invite you to download those. The data sets are also in a downloadable format. As I mentioned, we see from these results some interesting regional variation on the average levels, with the higher levels of perceived insecurity in the Middle East and North Africa and in sub-Saharan Africa, and with relatively less insecurity in Europe and Central Asia and North America. Projecting those by population size then would give this kind of distribution, something on the order of 275 million adults in East Asia and Pacific, and a similar number in South Asia in this having this insecurity of property rights. 120 million in sub-Saharan Africa, 90 million in Latin America, and somewhat less than 100 million people. So I think the point of these are that these are big numbers, and this is really kind of a endemic problem that we're now seeing in its real dimension. Sub-Saharan Africa, you can see then some of the most insecure, although I would also point out that interesting to see a country, Rwanda, with actually a rather low average. And we have some interesting results about the linkage, and in some cases, the lack of linkage between formal documentation and insecurity in Africa. And it's an area I think that further research is really warranted in. I will just mention that we tried to do some relationship between income adequacy, self-defined income adequacy measure, and tenure security. And I think those results by region, average results, were also quite interesting, where we see some real relationship between difficulty with income adequacy in North America, Middle East, related to insecurity, and somewhat muddier or less clear relationship in some of the other regions. Also of interest, I think, are these questions that we ask of women and men about insecurity in scenarios of spousal death or divorce. This is an area in which women tended to feel relatively greater levels of insecurity, and I think points to a very important area of policy that maybe has not received the attention that it deserves heretofore. The reasons for feelings of insecurity, the most prevalent being the owner renter may ask you to leave, financial reasons, disagreements with relatives, a death of a household member, and actually relatively smaller percentages around the possibility that government may seize the property, or customary companies or customary authorities might seize it. We see quite a bit of correlation between the measure of citizens' perceptions of security with other kind of macro measures of governance. Here's a plot against the Transparency Corruption Index, and we see relatively strong correlation. We see similar things with other indicators of governance. We're at this point in between global rounds, and we're working to do more specific country level deep dives in places, particularly India, Colombia, Egypt is planned, and really trying to tie this work to regional partnerships and outreach for policy impact, and with some thematic focus around fragility, conflict and violence, climate change, gender, and issues like customary tenure. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope that we can meet in person soon, and we'll look forward to being in touch with people virtually who may be interested in further discussion about Prindex. The website again is prindex.net. Thank you very much.